"Dad, we just need a little time," my son Daniel told me. His wife, Vanessa, stood beside him with a polite smile that never reached her eyes. "We'll help you around the house too," she added. I wanted to believe them. My name is Walter Reed. I was 77 years old, and I thought I would spend the rest of my life in the house I had built with my wife, Grace. I was wrong. The day my son moved into my home, something changed. At first he said it would only be for a few weeks. After all, Daniel was my son. I had raised him. I had worked for 40 years to give him a good life. So I said yes. That was my first mistake. Their car pulled into my driveway that afternoon. Suitcases. Boxes. Furniture. More boxes. It looked less like a visit and more like an invasion. Their son Tyler barely looked at me. "Hey, Grandpa." Then he walked inside. Their daughter Emma gave me a small smile. "Hi, Grandpa." At least she tried. I watched them carry their things into my home and felt a strange feeling growing inside my chest. A feeling that something important was about to be taken from me. I just didn't know how much. The first thing Vanessa did was walk into my kitchen and start throwing away food. "Walter, this cheese is expired." "It's fine," I said. She tossed it into the trash anyway. "This sausage is unhealthy." Trash. "These canned goods are old." Trash. I stood there silently while my groceries disappeared. Then Daniel came into the room. "Dad, Vanessa and I will take the master bedroom." My heart dropped. The master bedroom. The room where Grace and I had slept together for 45 years. The room filled with her books. Her photos. Her memories. "I'm comfortable where I am," I said. Vanessa immediately jumped in. "But Walter, climbing stairs is dangerous at your age." "I've never fallen. There's always a first time." She said it with a sweet smile. That made it worse. Daniel sighed. "Dad, please. It's only temporary." Temporary. That word would become a lie I heard again and again. I knew arguing wouldn't change anything. So I packed my things. Every object hurt. A picture of Grace. Her favorite vase. Our wedding rings. Each item felt like a piece of my life being pulled away. By evening, the house no longer felt like mine. Vanessa had already started changing everything. New decorations. New paintings. My photos were moved. My memories were pushed aside. Like they didn't matter anymore. That night, I sat alone in my new room downstairs. A tiny guest room. A narrow bed. An old dresser. Nothing else. I looked around and whispered toward Grace's photo. "What would you do?" The room stayed silent. The days that followed became unbearable. Vanessa changed everything. Breakfast was now at 8. My morning coffee disappeared. Instead, she handed me herbal tea. "Coffee isn't good for your heart." Nobody had asked what I wanted. My favorite television shows vanished. The living room belonged to Daniel and Vanessa now. Even the sound of my own house felt different. One afternoon, I came home from a walk and stopped cold. My record player was gone. My record collection was gone too. Where are my records? Vanessa didn't even look up. "Oh, those old things?" Old things. I felt my jaw tighten. "I put them in the garage. They're valuable. Nobody listens to records anymore." I rushed outside. The albums were stuffed into a damaged cardboard box. Crush. Treated like garbage. Some of those records had belonged to Grace. I carefully picked them up one by one. My hands shook. Not from age. From heartbreak. I carried the box back to my room. My room slowly became a hiding place. A place where I rescued pieces of my life before Vanessa could throw them away. But it didn't stop there. A week later, I found my photo albums in the trash. My family history. Pictures of my parents. Pictures of Daniel as a child. Pictures of Grace. Thrown away. I stared at the albums in disbelief. "Why?" Vanessa shrugged. "They take up space." I felt sick. "These photos are my life. They can be scanned." She acted as if she was doing me a favor. Daniel walked in during the argument. As usual, he arrived after the damage was already done. "Dad, we're just trying to help." Help. That word felt like a knife. "This is my house," I said. "These are my memories." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "You can't manage a house this big anymore." I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I wondered where my son had gone. Where was the little boy who used to run into my arms? The boy who cried after his first heartbreak? The boy who begged me to teach him how to ride a bike? The man standing in front of me felt like a stranger. That night, I sat on my bed flipping through rescued photo albums. I looked at a picture of Grace and me standing in front of our house. We were young. Happy. Full of dreams. We thought we would grow old together there. Cancer took her 5 years ago. Now it felt like the house was being taken too. I stared at her smile. I'm losing everything, Grace. My voice cracked, and for the first time I was afraid. Then everything changed. It happened on a rainy Sunday. Rain tapped softly against the windows. I sat in my room listening to music through headphones. One of the few useful things Tyler had ever shown me was how to listen to music on my phone. A knock sounded at the door. I expected Vanessa. Maybe another complaint. Instead, Emma stepped inside. She looked nervous. Grandpa, can I come in? Of course. She looked around my room. The stacks of books. The boxes. The albums. All the things Vanessa had pushed out of the rest of the house. Wow, Emma whispered. Yeah. She sat on the edge of the bed. Then she lowered her voice. Grandpa, I came to warn you. My stomach tightened. About what? She looked down. I heard Mom and Dad talking. I waited. Her face turned pale. Mom wants her parents to move in here. The room suddenly felt colder. Her parents. More people. More space needed. I already knew what was coming. Where would they stay? Emma swallowed hard. That's the problem. I stared at her. Tell me. She twisted her hands together. Mom and Dad think you should move somewhere else. My chest tightened. What kind of place? She hesitated. Then she finally said it. A nursing home. For a moment I couldn't breathe. A nursing home. My own son wanted to remove me from my own house. Not because I was sick. Not because I needed help. Because I was in the way. When were they going to tell me? Tonight. I closed my eyes. The betrayal hurt more than I could explain. Emma looked miserable. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I shook my head. This isn't your fault. What are you going to do? I looked toward the window. The rain kept falling. I don't know. Then I looked back at her. But I won't give up without a fight. That evening the family meeting began. Everyone gathered in the living room. Daniel looked nervous. Vanessa looked impatient. Tyler looked bored. Emma avoided my eyes. I sat in my old chair. The only thing Vanessa had failed to take from me. Daniel cleared his throat. Dad, we need to talk about the future. My future? I asked. He hesitated. Vanessa jumped in. Walter, we're worried about you. I almost laughed. Really? You forget things. No, I don't. You need help. No, I don't. You shouldn't live alone. I looked directly at her. You mean you need room for your parents? Her face tightened. Daniel stepped forward. Dad, that's not fair. It's true. The room fell silent. Vanessa tried again. We found a wonderful retirement community. I knew she was lying. I had heard about that place. Understaffed. Depressing. I'm not leaving. Daniel sighed. Dad, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. You can't stay here forever. The words hit me like a slap. Forever? This was my house. Not theirs. I built this home. We know. Then act like it. Vanessa crossed her arms. We've already made arrangements. My heart pounded. What arrangements? You move in 3 days. 3 days. They had already decided. Without me. Without asking. Without caring. And if I refuse? Daniel looked away. Vanessa answered. If necessary, we'll seek guardianship. The room spun. Guardianship. They wanted control of my life. My money. My decisions. Everything. You would do that? I stared at my son. His eyes dropped to the floor. Dad. That was all he said. And that was enough. I realized then that I had already lost. They had lawyers. Money. Resources. I had nothing. Nothing except pride. And heartbreak. Finally, I nodded. Fine. Everyone relaxed. But then I added quietly. I'll never forgive you. 3 days later they packed my life into 2 suitcases. Most of my books stayed behind. My collection stayed behind. My memories stayed behind. Vanessa decided what I needed. Vanessa decided what mattered. Emma secretly slipped extra photographs into my suitcase whenever her mother wasn't looking. She was the only one who cared. Grandpa, I'm sorry, she whispered. I hugged her. You tried. The morning I left, I stood outside looking at the bay. Fog covered the water. Grace and I used to sit there every evening, watching sunsets, talking about life, dreaming about the future. Now I didn't know if I would ever see it again. Daniel finally came outside. Dad, it's time. I looked at the water one last time. Then I turned away. The drive felt endless. Every familiar place broke my heart. The post office where I worked. The park where Grace and I walked. The flower shop where I bought roses for her every Friday. Piece by piece my life disappeared behind us. The nursing home was exactly what I feared. Gray, cold, lifeless. People sat staring at televisions. Nobody smiled. Nobody laughed. Emma looked at the building. It looks nice. I shook my head. Don't pretend, sweetheart. She lowered her eyes. Because she knew the truth too. They showed me my room. A bed. A closet. A nightstand. That was it. My entire life reduced to a tiny room. Daniel promised to visit. Vanessa promised too. I knew they were lying. Emma hugged me tightly. I'll come see you. Tears filled her eyes. I promise. I know. When they left, I sat on the bed. Then I cried. For the first time in years. I cried for Grace. For my home. For my son. For everything I had lost. Days passed. Then a week. Then another. Nobody came. Not Daniel. Not Vanessa. Not even Emma. I spent hours staring through windows. Waiting. Hoping. Nothing. Then on the 10th day everything changed. I was eating lunch when someone called my name. I looked up. A familiar face stared back at me. An old friend. Someone from another life. And before I knew it, the conversation that followed would give me something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. When I looked up in the dining room, I almost dropped my fork. Harold? The man standing there laughed. Walter Reed. I knew it was you. Harold Bennett had been one of my closest friends years ago. We worked together on community projects after retirement. Then life pulled us in different directions. Now he was standing right in front of me. We shook hands. Then we hugged. For the first time since arriving at the nursing home, I felt something warm inside me. Sit down, Harold said. We spent the next hour talking. He told me how he had ended up there after a bad hip injury. Then he looked at me carefully. What about you? The question hurt. But for some reason I told him everything. The house. Daniel. Vanessa. The lies. The nursing home. Every painful detail. Harold listened quietly. The deeper I got into the story, the angrier he became. Finally he leaned back in his chair. Walter, something doesn't sound right. What do you mean? Who owns the house? I do. Completely? Yes. He frowned. Then how did they force you out? I stared at him. I thought they could. Did you sign anything? No. Any legal papers? No. Harold slowly smiled. Well, then your son may have a problem. For the first time in months, my heart beat a little faster. What are you talking about? My niece is an attorney. I blinked. A lawyer? Yes. Harold leaned closer. Before you give up, talk to her. That night I barely slept. Hope can be a strange thing. After you've been crushed for so long, even a tiny piece of hope feels dangerous. Part of me wanted to believe Harold. Another part was afraid. Afraid of being disappointed again. Still, the next morning Harold arranged a meeting. 3 days later, his niece arrived. Her name was Rachel Morgan. She looked professional, calm, and confident. She sat across from me with a notebook. Mr. Reed, tell me everything. So I did. Again. Every detail. Every conversation. Every threat. Every lie. She listened carefully. Sometimes she took notes. Sometimes she asked questions. Finally she closed the notebook. Then she smiled. A very interesting smile. What? I asked. Mr. Reed, your situation is much better than you think. I stared at her. How? You still own the house. I know. No. I mean completely. She opened a folder. According to public records, the property is entirely in your name. My heart raced. Really? Yes. Then they can't take it? Not without your permission. I felt stunned. For months I had believed I was powerless. For months I had believed I had lost everything. Rachel continued. Did you ever give Daniel ownership? No. Did you sign a transfer? No. Power of attorney? No. She nodded. Then legally that house is yours. I sat there speechless. Harold grinned from across the room. I suddenly felt embarrassed. Embarrassed that I had let fear control me. Rachel leaned forward. Mr. Reed, your son convinced you that you had no choice. The truth hit hard. Because she was right. Nobody had forced me legally. They had manipulated me emotionally. They had pressured me until I gave up. And somehow that realization hurt even more. Rachel continued. There is another issue. What? If they moved your belongings, altered your property, and attempted to remove you through threats, that could create serious legal problems for them. I stared at her. For the first time I saw a path forward. Not through anger. Not through violence. Through truth. Through the law. Through consequences. What should I do? I asked. Rachel smiled. That depends. On what? How much are you willing to fight? I thought about Daniel. I thought about Vanessa. I thought about Grace. Then I answered. All the way. Rachel nodded. Good. The plan started immediately. Over the next few weeks, Rachel helped me gather evidence. Phone records, property documents, witness statements, everything. And during that time, something interesting happened. Emma finally visited. The moment she walked into my room, she burst into tears. Grandpa. I stood up and hugged her. She held on tightly. I'm sorry. It's okay. No, it's not. She wiped her eyes. They told me you were happy here. I looked at her quietly. They said you wanted to stay. My stomach tightened. Another lie. Of course. Emma sat beside me. I knew something felt wrong. I nodded. Your instincts were right. She looked around the small room. Sadness filled her face. Then she whispered, I miss you. I smiled gently. I miss you too. For nearly an hour we talked. And little by little, she revealed things happening back at the house. Things Daniel and Vanessa never wanted me to know. Vanessa's parents had already moved in. They were treating the home as if they owned it. My furniture had been moved. More of Grace's belongings had disappeared. Several valuable items were missing. Each new detail fueled my determination. By the time Emma left, I knew one thing. I wasn't going to walk away. Not anymore. A month later, Rachel called me. Her voice sounded excited. Mr. Reed, I found something. What? You should sit down. I sat immediately. What is it? The house has been listed for sale. Everything inside me froze. What? It was listed last week. That's impossible. I know. My hands shook. They're trying to sell my house? Yes. I could hardly breathe. The betrayal somehow became even worse. Not only had they pushed me out, now they were trying to get rid of the house entirely. The house Grace and I built together. The house filled with our memories. The house where our entire life happened. Rachel's voice turned serious. Mr. Reed, this changes everything. How? They cannot legally sell property they don't own. I felt anger building deep inside me. Cold anger. The kind that grows slowly. The kind that doesn't disappear. Rachel continued. We're going to stop this. And that's exactly what we did. Over the next 2 weeks, Rachel moved quickly. Letters were sent. Legal notices were filed. Records were secured. Every possible step was taken. Meanwhile, Daniel and Vanessa had no idea. They believed I was forgotten. They believed I was defeated. They believed I was sitting quietly in the nursing home waiting for life to end. They were wrong. Very wrong. The day of the confrontation finally arrived. Rachel picked me up early that morning. As we drove toward my neighborhood, my stomach twisted. Months had passed since I last saw my home. I wasn't sure what I would feel. Anger, sadness, relief, maybe all three. Then we turned onto my street. And there it was. My house. My home. The sight nearly brought tears to my eyes. Rachel parked. Ready? I took a deep breath. Yes. We walked to the front door. Rachel knocked. A few seconds later, the door opened. Vanessa stared at us. The color drained from her face. Walter. I smiled calmly. Hello, Vanessa. Her eyes shifted toward Rachel. Who is this? My attorney. The panic was immediate. I could see it. Like a storm passing across her face. Daniel, she yelled. A moment later, Daniel appeared. The second he saw me, he froze. Dad. Hello, son. His eyes moved toward Rachel. Then back to me. Fear appeared. Real fear. Rachel handed him a folder. You should read this. Daniel opened it. His face grew pale. What is this? A legal notice. Vanessa grabbed the papers. As she read them, her hands started shaking. This can't be real. Rachel remained calm. It is very real. Daniel looked stunned. You're suing us? No, I said quietly. I'm protecting what's mine. The living room fell silent. Then Vanessa exploded. You can't do this. I looked around the room. My house, my memories. Then I looked directly at her. I already did. Daniel stepped forward. Dad, let's talk. I laughed softly. The sound surprised even me. Talk. Please. Now you want to talk? He lowered his eyes. For once he had no answers. No excuses. No control. Just consequences. Rachel spoke clearly. The property belongs to Mr. Reed. We know that, Vanessa snapped. No, Rachel replied. You ignored that. Silence followed. Heavy silence. Then Daniel finally looked at me. For the first time he seemed ashamed. Dad, I made mistakes. Mistakes. Such a small word. A word people use when the damage is huge. I stared at him. You didn't make mistakes. His shoulders sank. You made choices. The truth hit him hard. I could see it. Vanessa tried another tactic. Walter, we're family. Family. The word almost made me laugh again. Family doesn't do this. Her face tightened. You don't understand. No. I shook my head. You don't understand. The room became quiet. Painfully quiet. Then I walked toward the fireplace. The same fireplace Grace loved. I touched the mantle gently. Memories flooded back. Christmas mornings. Birthdays. Family dinners. Years of laughter. Years of love. Years that had mattered. Then I turned back toward them. This house isn't just wood and walls. Nobody spoke. It contains an entire lifetime. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. But I wasn't finished. You treated that lifetime like garbage. The words hit harder than shouting ever could. Because they were true. For several seconds nobody moved. Then Rachel finally broke the silence. Mr. Reed has decided to sell the property. Everyone looked shocked. Including Daniel. What? I nodded slowly. Yes. Vanessa blinked. You want to sell it? Yes. Why? I looked around one last time. Because I finally understood something. The house wasn't Grace. The house wasn't my memories. Those things lived inside me. Not inside walls. And after everything that happened, I didn't want to spend my remaining years fighting over a building. I wanted peace. I'm ready, I said quietly. Daniel looked devastated. Dad. I raised a hand. No. His voice broke. Please. You already made your choice. Tears rolled down his face. For the first time I believed they were real. But some damage cannot be undone. Some wounds stay forever. A few months later the house sold. Legally. Properly. On my terms. The money was placed safely under my control. I moved into a beautiful retirement community by the water. Not because someone forced me. Because I chose it. That made all the difference. The place was peaceful. Friendly. Comfortable. And most importantly, it felt like freedom. Emma visited often. Sometimes every week. We ate lunch together. Walked by the water. Talked for hours. Our bond grew stronger than ever. As for Daniel, things changed slowly. Very slowly. He called. I didn't answer at first. Then months later I finally did. The conversation was awkward. Painful. Honest. For once there were no excuses. No blaming. No lies. Just regret. Real regret. Healing didn't happen overnight. It never does. Trust is easy to break. Much harder to rebuild. But Daniel kept trying. Again and again. Month after month. And eventually I saw something I thought was gone forever. The little boy I once knew. Not completely. But enough. One evening, Emma and I sat beside the water watching the sunset. The sky glowed orange and gold. Very similar to the sunsets Grace and I used to watch together. Grandpa. Yes. Are you happy? I thought about the question. Really thought about it. Then I smiled. Yes. She smiled too. Good. I looked out across the water. The pain hadn't disappeared. The betrayal hadn't disappeared. The memories hadn't disappeared. But neither had I. They tried to take my home. They tried to take my voice. They tried to convince me I was powerless. They were wrong. Because sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is refuse to surrender. And as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon, I felt Grace with me. Not in a house. Not in old furniture. Not in photographs. But in my heart. Where she had always been. And where she would stay forever. Thank you for watching Betrayal Revenge Stories. If this story touched your heart, remember that respect, trust, and family should never be taken for granted.